Hi friends, so welcome back to our video series Multiplayer Game Development. So in the previous video we have seen some introduction to multiplayer game development and we have seen what is the difference between a single player game and a multiplayer game. So in this video what we are going to see is that when we talk about this multiplayer game development, there are some words which we use quite a lot while developing this multiplayer game. So before start creating that game, we will see some of the terminology which we use while doing this game development. So in the previous class, we have seen what is the difference between a single player game and a multiplayer game. So when you play a single player game, so most of the casual games which you want to play for just for time pass, that mostly they are the single player games where you are the only player and either you play alone or you play with the computer. When you start playing that game, you don't have to wait for anyone. You can just start the game and start playing the game. And if you are playing against the computer, then you don't have to wait for the computer to join the game. Computer is always ready. So you can just start the game and play with the computer. So in single player game, you are the only player. But when you play a multiplayer game, it is a different scenario. So some of the terms which we use in the multiplayer game development is client, server, and host. So what is a client, what is a server, and what is a host? There is only one player involved in the single player game, that is you. But in multiplayer games, there could be more than one, there are more than two, three, four, or maybe more than 100 people or playing a single game. So one player may be sitting in India and another player may be sitting in US, another player is sitting in UK. So we can play with the players who is sitting around the globe. When you start playing a multiplayer game, for example, you want to play a first-person shooter game. When you join a game, you are getting connected to a server. Okay, so there is a server who is controlling this game. So all the players around the globe will connect to that server. Okay, this server is the computer who is going to control this entire game, and all the computers including yours who are connected to that server are called clients. Okay, so I hope you understood the terms server and client. Server is the computer, the main computer who controls that game, and the clients is the computers who are connected to that server. So you can say that this server as a dedicated server. Sometimes when in some games there could be a case where you don't have a dedicated server. At that time, what you will do? Okay, at that time, what happens is that any of these client computers will act as a server. So there will be one computer who is acting as a server while it is playing the game. So that computer is acting as server and client at the same time. Okay, so that computer is called a host. So if you have four players or playing the game at a time and you don't have a dedicated server, then any of these four computers will become a server. Okay, so that he is also playing the game and he is also acting as a server. So that is computer is called a host. Sometimes it also happens that this computer, who this host computer could be disconnected, or he leaves the game. At that time, what happens? We cannot continue the game because there is no host and there is no server. So we cannot continue the game. At that time, what will happen? This any of the other three computers. So we had four computers and one player left the game, and we have three remaining. And any of these three computers will become host, and we will continue the game. That process is called the host migration. So I hope you understood what are the server, then client, and host, then host migration. Now we will talk about a server. So what is a server? So when you hear about server, or when you think about server, you must be thinking like the Facebook server or the YouTube server or Google server. So these servers are very big servers. So when you talk about these servers, so these are big machines with lots of wires which can support some thousands of users at a time. So that is what which comes to our mind, but that is not only the server. So the simple definition of a server is that server is a computer which provides services to the computers which are connected to that computer. Okay, so if imagine that you have a small setup. Okay, so you have a small office, you have some 5 computers out there, and if one computer has got some files, okay, and he wants to share that files to other computers, then these all computers can connect to this computer where that server, that file is saved, and they all can access that this folder from that particular computer. So in that case, that computer which has got that folder for sharing is can be called a server. So in that case, you can call that as a file server. And for example, if you are connected to a printer from that computer, and all other computers are connected to that computer, and if they want to take a printout, they can give the command to this computer and they can take the printout. Okay, so it is not necessary that you have to directly connect to the printer. You can connect to the computer which is connected to that printer. In that case, that server is called a print server. There are different types of servers like that. Then we have a database server. So the database server is where the data of the users are stored. So there you will be having a database software like a MySQL installed in that computer. So it can be called a database server. So don't confuse like you can use one computer only for one service. So you can use the one computer for different services. So you can connect that to a printer and you can use that as a file server, or you can install a this MySQL software and you can use that as a database server. So the server is a computer which provides services to the other computers which are connected to that computer. So I hope you understood the concept of server. So next we will talk about the front end and back end. So what is a front end and what is a back end? Just imagine that you are browsing a website, e-commerce website like Amazon. So when you open that website, whatever you see, Like there will be product images of the products, there will be a login section, there could be videos, and there could be advertisements, everything or that you see or that you can feel, that is a front end. Okay, when you go to that website, you can select the products you want, and you can log into that website, and you can make the payment, the how you want to make the payment, like card payment or payment on delivery, like that. So these things which you can see and you can use, that is called a front end. And there is a backend also. Like if, for example, you are logging in to that particular website, then first you have to give your username, then you have to give the password. After that, what you do, you just click on the sign in button. When you click on the sign in button, all these information, the username or password you have entered, that is sent to the backend. Okay, so that is sent to a server, and this server will check the credentials, like whether your username and the corresponding password are matching or not. If any of this is not matching or incorrect, or the server could not find that in the database, then you will not be able to enter the website. Okay, so your permission will be denied. But if your username is right and the corresponding password is right, then you will get the permission to get into the website. So this process of granting the permission happens. So that is happening in the backend. So you can say that the something or the part which you can see and you can work with, that is called a front end, and the something, the processes which you cannot see, that is happening in the backend. So when you talk about web development, so normally nowadays the most of the websites are these dynamic websites where both the front end and back end are involved. So if both the front end and back end database are involved, then you can say that website is a dynamic website. And if only the front end is involved and it doesn't have any backend processes, then you can say that it is a static website. Okay. So in static website is, you can say in earlier times we used to develop a lot of static website where you want to give a, what do you say, if you want to give that information regarding a particular company or a small company, then you can create a website. So when I started my multimedia career some around 17 years back, 18 years back, so at that time I started as a web designer. So I created the websites, but those websites has got the contents like the about us, then products, then contact us. So all the websites look like the same. So content are all almost same. So I used to tell everyone that like I am a web designer, I become a web designer, like that. But later stages, I understood that I was just developing the static websites. Okay, so that is static website is very easy. So if you know HTML5, then CSS, then you can develop the static website. So static website has no contact with the databases. So it is just used for the giving the information about that particular company to the potential customers. So even if you open that website even after 10 years, so it will look the same. There is no change in the contents or nothing like that. But in a dynamic website, when you open it every day, there could be changes in the content. So because the data is coming from the processes are happening in the backend, and the whatever is the result that is displayed in the front end. So backend is the development or dynamic websites are a little bit tough to develop than the static website. Though that is the concept of front end and back end. So front end is something which you can see when you open a website or when you open a game, enter a game, the whatever you do or whatever that happens in the front end, and there are a lot of processes related to that game or website that you cannot see. Okay, so those things happen in the back end. So next we will talk about the lobby and room. So what is a lobby? So when you enter a multiplayer game, you cannot directly start the game, unlike the single player game where you can start the game as soon as you enter that game. But in multiplayer game, first you go to a lobby. In the lobby is somewhat like our hotel lobby. Before entering the or your room, you can just relax in that lobby, and you can talk with the staff, and you can get the information about the room like that. So lobby is where you can see which rooms are available and how many players are there and how many players are allowed in a particular room, what could be the difficulty level in that room. Every information you will get from the lobby. So in lobby, there could be thousands of players who are waiting to enter a room. So if you are playing a chess game, you can invite your friend, or you can become friendly with someone, and you can invite him to play a chess game. Or if you are playing a first-person shooter game, then you can form a team with other players, and you can challenge the other teams to play with you. So the process of making friends or inviting friends and or creating a team to play with the other team, that is called a matchmaking. So this lobby is where you wait and check the rooms, and when you are ready to enter a room, you can enter that room and play with the players in that particular room, and you can start the game. So it is also possible that when you are browsing, so if a room can have the maximum of 4 players, or if they have 4 players, then they will start the game and they have already 3 players are there in that particular room, then you can enter that room and you can start the game immediately. So unlike the single player game where you can start the game as soon as you enter the game, in a multiplayer game, you enter a lobby and you check the rooms available. Then you enter a room and you start the game. So I hope you understood what is a lobby, what is a room, and what is a matchmaking. So now we will talk about latency. So what is a latency? Latency is a very important factor which can make or break a multiplayer game. So for example, if you enter a multiplayer game, so for example, there are 4 players are connected to that game, and if you enter a game by selecting a character, then this character is created in all other computers also. Like if, for example, if my character is Ajish, and when I enter the game, then the all other players have get the copies of that character in their computer. Okay, so and imagine that I move this character using my keys, and so this data is sent to the server, and the server sends this data to other players. At that time, the all other players can see me walking. Okay, I have imagine that I have a gun and I pull a trigger. Okay, so this data is also sent to the server, and the server processes this data and this sent back to my computer. So the time takes from the my pulling the trigger and processing the data in the server and sending back to the computer is called the latency. So in a good multiplayer game, the latency should be minimal. So if you have a high latency rate, then it would be very uh, difficult to maintain the interest level of that game. Because if I pull a trigger and that data is processed very slow in for the other players, then maybe they will not be able to escape from that bullet. So in that case, the game will not be interesting, and people will stop playing that game. So latency is a very big important factor when you talk about the multiplayer games. We will talk more about latency in the coming videos. So you just understand that latency is the delay that happens from the action and the execution of that action in the server and sending back. Okay, so I hope you understood the latency. So now we will see a demo of the game which we are going to develop. So I am going to show you the single player version of the game which we are going to convert that as a multiplayer game. So before proceeding further, we will see a demo of that game. So I hope you enjoyed the demo. So this is just a single player version. We will create this game from the start, and uh, going forward we will see how we can convert this single player game to multiplayer game. So like I mentioned, we will be using Unity and Photon to develop this multiplayer game. So I hope you will enjoy this video series, and after completing this video series, I hope that you will be very comfortable in developing multiplayer games. So I hope you got the idea of some of the basic terminologies that we are going to use while developing the multiplayer game. So these are only some of the terms which we are going to use, and there are a lot of other terms which we use while developing this multiplayer game, which we will discuss while we develop this game. In the coming videos, we will start developing the game. First, we are going to develop a single player game. From that, we will convert that single player game to the multiplayer game. So I hope you will enjoy this video series, and thank you for watching this video. Thank you so much.